The middle part of this season has been all about drivers getting out of their comfort zones. Whether it's at lesser used tracks, newer venues, or the North American staple of ovals, you better be ready to do something a bit out of the ordinary. Road Atlanta's short course will fit right into this as we get ready to watch round 7 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Bobbert O'Brien, and is using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Road Atlanta has seen a lot of action lately, but in case you missed it, let's check out our track guide. Welcome to Road Atlanta, the scene of incredible sports car racing for decades and the home to the Petit Le Mans. This is a track that has proven itself to be worthy of attention on a world stage. With it being situated only an hour northeast of Atlanta, Georgia, the circuit is in a prime location. But despite its flagship race, in contrast to the real Le Mans, the full course is a measly 2.5 miles long. The club layouts also clock in at just under 2 miles. Packed within this small lap length is a series of technical and challenging corners, some of which can be race-ending even when small mistakes are made. Turn 1 is a fast sweeper which compresses the car into the track, but the high speeds mean that when you go off, you typically go off in a big way. Turn 3 is notorious for its curved entry into a blind apex. Too far inside and you face a cut course penalty. Too far outside and you're likely to spin out. Then there's the unassuming Turn 5. The wide curving lures you into getting greedy, but the close walls on either side gobble up cars and spit them out as a crumpled heap. With all the tricky fast turns, that's not to say that there aren't passing opportunities. The main one comes at the chicane at the bottom of the backstretch. The huge downhill drop into the turn makes outbraking yourself quite easy though, so be careful. The whole thing wraps up with the frightening final corner. With nothing but a giant wall right to the outside as cars fly through at high speed, it's not often that wrecks are small. Boasting a wide swath of series over its history, everything from NASCAR to Indy Lights and of course IMSA, the main use of the track is SCCA events and driving schools. No wonder this place is popular both in real life and here on the iRacing service. Fans will no doubt get to enjoy many more years of action at this incredible track. Well, for those that were expecting, as Sean Ambrose likes to put it, the ham hock, this is not that, Joey. This is a much different version of Road Atlanta.
The shortened version, just under 2 miles, and kind of looks interesting from the track map point of view, and I'll try to explain this as best as I can here. It starts off with our normal lap on the front straightaway at Road Atlanta. We climb up through Turn 1. We do the standard Turn 2, 3, 4 down the S's. However, when you reach Turn 5, we no longer take that bumpy left-hander to reach the end of the circuit. We take this long, sweeping right-hander, kind of make that egg shape. It's also known as Turn 6, is this long, sweeping right-hander that leads out onto the back straightaway and then down the hill into what is now Turn 7 and 8. That is your kind of faux 10A, 10B chicane at the end of the back straightaway. And you've linked back up to the regular circuit where you just come back on down the hill. But it is the shortened version here at Road Atlanta. Don't be scared if it looks a little bit different than usual. One big thing here, it is short. There's going to be a lot of lap traffic.
That will be for certain, especially with as big of a field as we have. But let's talk about the top 10 in that field in the points. Seb Tixier is still leading, but Nieva, he took the win, his second ever in the championship back at Milwaukee. And that puts him within 25 points of Seb. Nieva's never won a championship, but he's been a threat for them the past couple of seasons. He's just so darn consistent. Same with Zamaloa, who I believe has, I think, something like 3 or 4 second places so far this season. He's been racking them up. Togo Hisada has been a little hot and cold, and he said that he's probably not going to be able to compete for the full season in the past. We'll see how many he's able to show up for, but he's still hovering back there in 5th. So still a fascinating one coming into the latter half of this season. And there's the F2 standings as well, Joey. Let's take a look at that.
The only difference between F1 and F2 is that driver's iRating. Bjorn Ackerman currently leads the way. But look at the battle for second place. Only 5 points separate three drivers. That's Jan Steffen, Michael Grissinger, and Kurt Klapper. All that second, third, fourth battling there. And then it tightens up again. Tied there for fifth place between Terry Tromshauser and Tobias Harnvey. Alejandro Sanchez, Timothy Porter, Robert Reynolds, Matthew Nelson. They are all incredibly close as well. A really good championship here.
And they have the Cup of Nations that they always fight for every season. Spain leading the way because of Zamayoa and Nieva, obviously contributing quite a few points. But Singapore still in second with the likes of Seb Tixier doing a little bit more heavy lifting. Gary Ho also contributes to that, but he's down in 10th right now, so not as high up as we've seen him in some seasons. The United States kind of a distant third as those two are starting to stretch away. Let's go over today's race details here, Joey.
We are at Road Atlanta for round 7 of 12, 36 laps around this shortened version of the circuit. Every week here, it is an open setup, so that means you get to tune your car exactly how you need it to drive for yourself. There is no spare car, though, so if you get into trouble early, you're going to have to live with that damage. A drive-through penalty at 17x, disqualification at 25x. Here at Road Atlanta, there's plenty of room to run off the racetrack and not spin out. However, going down the S sections and especially through the new Turn 5, I think things are going to get pretty narrow for these drivers.
Well, it's a bit of a narrow gap, but not as narrow as I would have expected between Mick Claridge and Togo Hisada. About a 10th between them, and Ove Trangerade is where it gets a lot tighter, less than a 10th, about 200ths of a second between the front row and the second row up there. Seb Tixier sitting in 4th, interestingly. He was our quickest with Nieva behind him for quite some time before here late in the qualifying we see Claridge and Hisada suddenly jump them. And here we see that long turn 5 all the way around up over the hill, cutting across the course down to the backstretch. And even then, the backstretch isn't always completely straight, Joey, so the curve kind of keeps continuing.
I think we are hearing from Mick Claridge, it's just kind of a power drift fest all the way through turn 5 and turn 6. It's going to be the drivers keeping their right foot to the ground and steering this thing, driving this car all the way around. You see Yanni Lehman just get too yawed out there, and that's what can happen.
Yeah, just couldn't keep it together. Robert Plumley down to the chicane, trying to keep it within the track boundaries, but actually it looks like he's already taken his 2 laps. 57.1 is the highest that he will go, and I think he sits 19th with that time. Kurt Klapper traditionally doesn't set a qualifying time, so I imagine he is going to back out of these and intentionally go out of bounds at some point throughout the lap, but we'll see where he winds up in the end. So let's jump forward to Ove Trangerade, who always takes these extra laps after his qualifying. Like I said earlier, he managed to put himself into 3rd, a fierce fighter without many good places to pass here today. He's going to have his work cut out for him if he manages to be quicker than those top 2.
I was hoping that he was going to be able to give us a ride on board lap there, because you notice we still have about 2 minutes left in qualifying. We do have some drivers that could potentially go out there and set the lap times. I'm not sure if they are actually going to do that or not. However, there is still the time left on the board as we jump back to Kurt Klapper. Joe, you were mentioning Kurt. He's always starting at the back, just like how Jason Klapper is starting at the back. Kind of building that iRating, building that fun meter, if you will, of doing all the passes.
Absolutely. And speaking of fun, I'm looking down at our lap times. I expected them to be tight, but we go down to 22nd place, and it is still within a second and a half of each other. There is not much to separate the drivers here, despite there being some complicated corners there early on in the lap. So Kurt Klapper brings it down through the last chicane with about a minute and a half to go. And yeah, he slows up here and heads down into pit lane. Let's go through our starting grid with all the cars that we've got here today. I want to try and get through this before they grid up too quickly. Mick Claridge will be on the pole with Togo Hisada starting next to him. Ove Trangerade will be P3. You've got Seb Tixier then on the outside of that second row, our points leader. Jorge Nieva chasing him will start from 5th, as Iztok Vreco will be in 6th. Then it's going to be Laust Olsen in P7 and Gary Ho in the 8th position. John Olsen starts 9th today with the top 10 rounded out by Steve Morris.
I think our biggest surprise comes in the 11th place position, the number 1 car, Oye Zamayoa. There in 11th, Glenn Becker going to be joined next to him on row number 6. Then we have Michael Grissinger in 13th place. Eloy Verga Encosta in 14th place. Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado in 15th. Bjorn Ackerman, our F2 points championship leader, is going to start from 16th. On row number 9, we have Gary Quellen in 17th and Dylan Freckleton in 18th. And then on row 10, we have Robert Plumley and Kevin Verbruggen.
Jana Lehman starts from 21st, followed by Jonathan Jordan. Terry Traumhauser will be 23rd. Matthew Maudsley put it in P24 as the quarter-century mark goes to Tobias Harnvey. Edouard Jaramillo will be in 26th. Jan Steven, 27th. Then on the outside of that row, it is Cam Porter in 28th. Ivan Jojo will be 29th, flanked by Ricardo Ruiz in 30th.
We have Andres Bruno here in 31st, David Muse in 32nd, Pablo Rodriguez Joglar in 33rd. Jason Clapper is going to be starting in 34th. All of these cars did not set a time in qualifying. Christo Shinmai, Kurt Clapper in 36th. Row 19 is Ryan Freeman, Natasaki Thomas, and then we have Peter Elfar and Robert Reynolds in row number 20.
Let's not forget, Joey, this is a standing start, not something that typically happens in real life here at Road Atlanta. So they are positioned all the way up almost to the bridge.
It's going to be pretty interesting, especially because they all go downhill from there, Joe. So not necessarily where you want to be in terms of track position, but hey, at least it's a rolling start.
Exactly. So
soapbox derby, if you will.
Yeah, put it in gear, put the brake on, and just be ready to go, I suppose. As we wait for the clock to tick down, we saw the weather there. Pretty good conditions today, so hopefully that will help out. But it's going to be frantic once they start to catch that lap traffic. Let's hope that we get safely through this first lap in the first place. Still waiting on just a few cars to grid up in the mid-pack. Oh, looks like that's the rest of them right now. So the engines now start to rev here for round 7. The lights are up at the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series, and the green flag is out. Off the line, Mick Claridge gets a pretty good start. It's a slow one back there for Iztok Vreco. He gets absolutely swamped. His car is going down the inside of him. Take position into turn 1. Front of the pack is cleanly through him. I'm watching the back of them carefully. I don't see any cars off yet. Let's head to turn 3.
As they come up and over the hill now, I expect a few cars to be drifting wide, but very well-mannered so far. Knock on wood for this entire 49 field. Now we go down the S's and into turn 5 for the first time. You're going to have to manage that throttle around this sweeping right-hander.
And they're cold, too. They have not been warmed up at all at this stage. Is coming down into the braking zone. This is awful close for the lead. Claridge having to go defensive as Togo Hisada tries to outbrake him. Trangarade is giving watch, but he's got to be careful himself. Here comes Seb Tixier pulling the switch back behind him. Battle for third now.
He's already up the inside, but can't keep the nose down. You actually see him give the spot back to Ove Trangarade. I think that's just a little nice, friendly camaraderie between racers.
Single file finally down into turn 1. Looks good here for our top 5. Watching on board with Nieva as he gets awful close to the gearbox, kicking up a little bit of the dirt as they go as close as they can to the edge of the track to widen this turn.
Now we dive down this S section 3, 4 and approach the different shaped turn 5. Nieva all the way up the inside. They're almost getting into the back of Tixier. But I think it's so important how you manage this throttle coming out of the corner because it sets you up down into this passing area.
I think we had our first accident in Bjorn Ackerman spinning out in turn 3. We'll see if we can check it out in a bit, but that's an incredibly clean start for this short track that we thought was going to be so tricky, as I think maybe second place might be overtaken by Ove Trangarade down the hill and out of the final turn. He's into P2 as Hisada is still under threat. Here comes Tixier.
Yeah, Tixier actually lifted, so did Nieva, so I think they're totally content to run behind Togo, let him kind of gather his breath, and I only caught the back end of this. It looked like he went too deep into that final chicane, Joe. It just really cost him on the exit.
I've seen so many over-unders through there over the years. I'm kind of curious if it'll be a lot of the same in this shorter version. I think we've got a replay. Is this Ackerman or Hisada here? This is Hisada losing out.
Yeah, and you see Ove just was able to put the power down with the standard line through what is now that 7 and 8 complex sneak up the inside of Togo Hisada. And I'm actually watching Togo. I think he's struggling a little bit early on right now. He just doesn't seem to have the pace, certainly of Mick Claridge, who's running away, but even Ove Trengrade is starting to pace it out.
Well, the temperatures, I said, are pretty ideal, 83, but I wonder, with that long corner, is this something where you'd want the tire pressures maybe a bit low at the start, just because you're going to be putting so much strain on them through that corner throughout the race?
I think that you have to trust your setup as Tixier once again closes in on Togo here for what is now the 3rd place position, but you got to trust your setup in what you've built each week. I think I've always said that Togo goes through a couple different moments in the race with his speed, and right now maybe he doesn't have it. He might pick it up here in a little bit.
Still having to play a bit of defense, even down through the S's on Tixier and Nieva, who have been giving watch. That is Tixier in the blue car, Nieva in the dark green with the red. He takes a little bit of a peek down into the chicane, but decides against it and gets back in line. These three definitely dropping off of Ove and Mick Claridge. Definitely two guys that have been longtime rivals in this series, but in the mid-pack, it is all still just as frantic. This is Glenn Becker versus Steve Morris.
I think I see that this train goes about almost 8 cars, almost 10 cars back there, so this is a huge train for what is going to be the 11th place position. This is Steve Morris right in front of Glenn Becker as we go up through turn 1 here. These nice open cockpit cars, and you get a shot of Glenn in his virtual reality with the wind in his hair.
I love it. Also, Eduardo Jaramillo had a big accident down into the chicane, so he is into pit lane to get that repaired, unfortunately. Single car incident as he outbraked himself and tried to avoid the car ahead. Becker out of the long right-hander of 5 and on to the backstretch. You can see the car ahead, but maybe just a bit too far behind for anything this lap.
I got news that Togo Hisada just lost another place. So now Seb Tixier is in front. He's getting challenged from Nieva up there. So wonder what's going on with Togo Hisada as we continue right on board here. Glenn Becker, just nice smooth laps, honestly.
I suspect this might be the pass. Oh, and Hisada looks like he's a little bit wide. It almost looked like he was side by side there going into the corner.
And this is coming down. He actually just had a moment right here as well, live, as this is Tixier getting his muscles out, coming down the S's. We saw him poke a nose a couple laps ago, but they were able to secure it.
Wow, that was very brave from Seb, and it worked out in the end. But as we come back live together, it goes Hisada and Nieva into the wall. Hisada flies into the gravel, gets it pointed back forward. How damaged is the car, though? Because that was a pretty good hit with one another.
Yeah, I think it's done for. I see Togo Hisada heading to pit lane here, and unfortunately, I got to put this one on that number 7 car on Nieva. Not malicious by any means. He just waited a little bit too long to poke out from that slipstream and got into the back of Togo.
Car's probably so on edge as well. I'm sure they were on a trajectory, and there was little they could do to change that. Contact was made, and both of them fall down the order. Wow. This promotes John Olsen up to the 4th position. Wow, great move for him. He's up 5 spots. Zamaloa, we've been talking about him. 6 spots gained from his poor qualifying.
And talk about more problems on the racetrack. Unfortunately, Nieva just had another spin after collecting from that incident with Togo. So as we ride on board with Laust Olsen and some of these biggest movers, they're having much better days than others out there.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised Nieva did not pit the car. He's stayed out and is going to try and survive, it seems, as we watch Vreco. Not a name I'm as familiar with. Not sure if we've seen him in prior races here, but he's holding himself well. Remember, this is The strength of field race, for those that follow iRacing, know what we're talking about there. This is the best of the best, all kind of agreeing to come together and race in this one race over the course of the week. This is, of course, an official race in iRacing, so anybody who has the license level can compete here in the Lotus 49s.
And trust me, when you come to these strength of field races, you might think that you're a big fish coming into a small pond, but there are some incredibly hungry sharks out here that are willing to snatch up any comers into this series. And until you get your kind of feet under you here, get to know the names, trust me, you will be wowed by the speed that's out here.
Yeah, and pretty much everybody who shows up is usually a specialist in these cars. So they've spent a lot of years in this machine, which has now been around for a decade on the sim as well, now that I think about it. So it's had some time to get settled in, to be tweaked and perfected. And I'd say a lot of these drivers are quite big fans of how it races. Back to Nieva, all the way down in 19th and in a scrum of cars.
To get by Dylan Freckleton currently, who's right in front of him. Now, Dylan usually runs the Lotus 79 cars where we're usually... Oh, and here's a spin from the 14. That's Ricardo Ruiz at the top of the S's.
Oh.
That was right in front and now collects somebody else.
I think that was Matthew Maudsley, who's doing his best to try and avoid him, but the car snapped back across. And Pablo Hoglar, I think, did a fantastic job avoiding. He had to go into the grass, but managed to stay out of the incident. That could have been a lot worse, but sad to see someone get caught up in that spinning vehicle.
We've been talking about having to drive these cars earlier in the show, and you look at them, they almost look like an early version of a sprint car, and how much grip they have, it kind of drives like one too. You really have to drive it with your right foot, control that angle with your throttle pedal.
You know, I actually got to see one of the old dirt Indy cars when I was at Indy recently. I think it was Alan Senior's car. And yeah, they are raw looking machines up close. There's so little to them. And they certainly are lightweight. So these things, kind of the European version of that, if you will. And they're racing on American track, but I'd say this is a fitting circuit for these cars, with them having to really manhandle them.
And they don't quite get wound up all the way down the back straightaway, but I think this shortened course actually provides a little bit more danger, if you will, because you have to control that car through that long sweeping right-hander, and it just wants to over-rotate on you. If you get too greedy with your right foot, around it goes.
Well, and on Grissinger here, he's fighting for the 12th spot, and then in front of them, that's Glenn Becker, one of our camera cars, holding just outside of the top 10. In 11th, he's a little wide through 3, but he manages it. Does look like Quellen was a little stronger out of that corner, but as we've seen, it can be dangerous to try and pass down through the S's, so they're going to stay in a line way wide once again for Michael Grissinger.
Yeah, he's just got to keep it together here. He managed to keep it on the racetrack, and now Gary Quellen is kind of sitting right here wondering, do I poke my nose down the inside? He's not quite close enough here on this lap. Gonna have to come up with a new way around, but you're right, Michael Grissinger, and he's out wide a little bit again.
Car seems just to not want to go where he wants to put it, and they got to watch out because Salgado and Plumley are creeping up behind them, and this could get even more interesting in a second. Not sure if that was a defense or attack from Grissinger. I'd wager a defense as he went to the inside line down into turn 1.
I think so, but we've also been able to see him kind of wandering around a little bit on the racing line. I wonder if he's just kind of hanging on out there with the throttle. Sometimes the car is just loose and you can be in the groove humming along collecting those quarters, and before you know it, it can snap out on you.
He's getting ever closer to the likes of Gary Quellen behind him. In fact, we might have an attempt at a pass here as Quellen is going to have to either go to the way inside or try and do it the long way around. He's going to try it the long way around, and Grissinger will fend him off. Laust Olsen, though, off the course, down through the chicane. How did he get here?
Unfortunately, this is the second incident Laust has had off the racetrack in the same amount of laps as going down into turn... Oh, no! That was Gary Ho in the number 10 car just from nowhere.
Wow. just an absolute bowling ball into the side of him. I don't think either of us expected that car to suddenly appear in that replay. And away they went into the gravel. Where is the 10 sitting right now? Did he get away with that?
He's still driving, but it's not very fast. Yeah, that was just, I think that was just completely blown on the brake marker, unfortunately, and you don't really see that out of Gary Ho too much.
No, that was a highly unusual situation for this car. It does have long braking zones, but speaking of which, I thought I was going to eat my words there for a moment, but a nice move up the inside, and I think that was Gary Quellen actually making that pass.
And here we go, around lap traffic. Oh, it's going to get a little bit narrow here as the fields, they're going to start to stack on top of each other. This four-car battle still remains. You see Michael Grissinger in that black car still poking his nose down in there.
This is where it gets a little bit crazy, I'm sure. We've got most of the cars still out there. I think it's 34 vehicles still racing. Somebody off track for a brief moment. Didn't see who exactly that was, but 34 is plenty around this short little circuit. And Joey, I know you've got your eye on something I've been kind of just spying here and there.
Seb Tixier has reeled in Ove Trangrade up here for this second place position. Mick Claridge has continued to he's just been sending it as what he's been doing out there in P1, and these guys aren't even catching, but this battle is on for second.
Yeah, obviously, Mick back home racing again for a little while. In between his trips, and Tixier getting very, very close to Trangrade. He could try and make a move here, especially with Trangrade going completely off the course. He's going to be able to hold on to it. Trangrade does have a slowdown penalty. He's got to give back the time. Seb has an easy pass through turn 5.
He likes that turn 3 and 4 section. Remember, he got to the inside of Togo Hisada earlier in the race, so maybe it's Seb Tixier that can go hunt down Mick Claridge.
I wouldn't put it past him. Seb is a multi-time champion in this series, and he's definitely very different from what we saw before he got his championships. He's such a cool character now, just seems to really kind of take everything in stride. It doesn't matter whether he wins and loses. If he has a good race and if he has the pace to chase down the winner, he's going to do it.
And, you know, I can't do a Seb Tixier accent impression over here, but I know that he's out in clean air right now, and he's yelling in that microphone at Mick Claridge that he's coming for him.
Another car off for a brief moment there in the background. It was that same yellow car. I'm trying to track him down at some point, but I've also seen, I think, poor Jason Clapper off the track recently, so he's not been having the traditional climb through the orders. We got Jan Steffen here, kind of sandwiched between a couple cars farther down.
Ivan Jojo right behind him, as well as Tobias Harnby directly in front of him. That is that sandwich that you were talking about with Jan Steffen as they go through turn number 1 here. It's a good battle back for what is the 22nd position. This is 4 cars all involved in that same grouping here, all still spilling it out for 17 laps right now.
Yeah, and this is about to where the halfway point is. Yeah, next lap will mark the halfway point in this race, and we're up to about 27th place, still being on the lead lap. Everybody behind them have gone a lap down or more, so they are getting into more and more cars here, and this is going to be one of those battles that the leaders should be reaching relatively soon.
I'm checking on Mick. He's going down into that final chicane, turn 7 and 8 on this track map here. So you're right, he's not too far away. Maybe another handful of laps and he'll start to catch him. Now, he does have 3 seconds over Seb Tixier. I'm curious to see what the lap times come in this time around now that Seb is officially in clean air. But I think that lap traffic could definitely come into play.
Ooh, it was 4 tenths quicker from Seb that time by. So, yeah, he's been unleashed a little bit. Granted, I think it was a slightly slower lap because Mick's best is a 55.9, but the best of Seb Tixier, which wasn't even last lap, is a whole 10th faster.
I think you got to uncage the beast of Seb Tixier, and that's exactly what he is right now. He's freed.
He's not running away from Ove Trangrade quite yet, though.
He's bringing him with him, if you noticed. Ove set his fastest lap right behind Seb Tixier. So I think this is a good combo right here. Ever since Tixier got around Trangrade, he's going to bring the party to Mick.
Oh, and that's going to be quite the party, especially if all three of them come together. They're definitely running away from John Olsen, who sits in fourth. So it'll probably just be these two catching up to them, if they can, as we take a look back at that battle between Olsen and Zamaloa, who, remember, is fighting for a championship, but he's going to lose points to Seb Tixier today unless he gets up on that horse.
He's just been chipping away at this gap to the number 4 car, John Olsen. He's been doing a really good job at it. He hung out around 3/4 of a second, then got down to a half a second, and now you see him right at that kind of 2-car length mark as we go down through the S's. And I think this has just been a good, consistent race from Zamayoa out here. He didn't have that qualifying effort that I think that he wanted, but he's kept the car clean and he's continued to move forward.
He's also managed to get a couple mistakes from what we've seen so far out of John Olsen. Saw him go a little wide there through turn 5, although I kind of wonder, as I see cars do that at the entry, if maybe they're trying to square off that long turn 5 a little by going wide at the start of it.
Now, I'm going to be a little bit ignorant here, Joe, because I haven't driven this version of Road Atlanta in a little while, as we see Nieva try to make his charge all the way up through the field. That's Michael Grissinger he is passing right here. Looks like he should be able to get this move done. But speaking of that odd line through turn number 5, it's not a perfectly round corner, Joe. I think that all these drivers are still feeling it out themselves.
That could be. I've driven it a couple times in the past, and I know there have been certain cars I've tried that with, but I don't think with this one. And this car is definitely its own beast. So let's see what it looks like from the blimp. Maybe this good overhead shot will give us a better perspective on things.
It's either that or the trees are going to be right smack where you need to be. And trust me, if you've been to Road Atlanta, they're there. There's a bunch of trees.
Yeah, so there goes that. We'll try again later, I'm sure. This is not a common layout used, so I imagine those trees typically full of people just looking for some camping space up through there. And as they head down the hill, once again, the 25 hot on his heels. Meanwhile, speaking of hot on his heels, Traeger still being a pest to Tixier. He's filling up the mirrors.
I think he's just... It's exactly right. He's being a pest. I think he's kind of pushing Tixier along. I don't think that Tixier is ever going to go defensive on Trengrade right here. I do think that they are kind of working together to try to hunt down Mick Claridge. You see Trengrade stay right in line in that braking zone, and I do think they've got a good thing going. They've shaved it down to 2.5 seconds to Mick now.
Yeah, I've been kind of looking back at those lap times every now and then, and it's been a bit back and forth. Mick, with a 56.4, though. I wonder if he's also
More
struggling.
traffic.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, sorry to interrupt you there, Joe. It's just we finally caught that traffic. We mentioned it's a short circuit. You're going to deal with lap traffic all day today, and it is becoming a factor now.
It really is, and I think that Mick Claridge is going to have to try and maybe be a bit more aggressive with it in places, if possible, to try and lose a little less time. I'm sure he's trying to preserve himself and not get tangled up here, but he's got to hustle or else he is going to get caught, because we've got plenty of time left in this that they could run him down. Here he comes upon some of that battling I was talking about before. Harnvey with the car off the track. That's Chinmay, who's going to lose positions, along with him going side by side. No place for Mick to go now.
This is a dangerous spot for Mick Claridge. He's got to tiptoe his way through here. He went to the outside around that final corner, and I think the only saving grace is that maybe Tixier got held up a little bit as well, as same with Trengrade, but it has come down now under 2 seconds.
It was a half a second difference that lap. You're right, Tixier was a lot slower himself, but he still managed to use that quite a bit better. Here he gets trapped in one of the more difficult parts down through the S's, which might pay it back for Claridge because he is free. And yes, I see our timing and scoring is gapping back apart. So it giveth and it taketh the traffic.
I say it all the time. It's the ebb and flow of racing. Sometimes you run up on traffic, and like you say, it gives you some lap time. Sometimes you run up on it and it takes the lap time from you. But no matter what, whatever the leader has to drive through, second and third, they also have to get to it eventually.
As they plunge down the hill around that final corner once again. Got to be super scary in these cars, especially when you go right to the edge there. Tixier's pushing now. I don't think he's leaving anything on the table because he knows he's lost some time. You can see him wagging the tail of that Ford-Cosworth as he streams it through these fast, sweeping corners of Road Atlanta.
I'm going to agree with you. I think that he's gone full visor down, hammer down, whatever you want to call it, because he started to gap it out over Trengrade. You see Ove just hanging onto the car coming down through the S's. Unfortunately, Tixier got held up a little bit there in turn 5 from that lapped car, but once again just wiggling that car back and forth, trying to put the power down.
In these helmets, I guess, would it be goggles tightened instead of visor down?
Yeah, I guess so.
I do love that they went period appropriate with the headgear on the drivers for this car. Even though there's a lot of things that they don't have period appropriate on the tracks. They tried their best to try and mimic the time of these 60s vehicles. But Ove Trengrade, got to give him credit. He's sticking with Seb Tixier the whole way. And I kind of wonder, though, if Seb is just trying to play patient, which would be abnormal for him. Whoa, that was a big moment for Seb coming out of turn 4.
Oh, my goodness. That was a huge moment up over the top of the hill for Seb Tixier, and Ove Trengrade had a front row seat right behind that action. And Joe, I do think that Trengrade is kind of hanging out. However, remember how smart and how fast Ove is out there. You think that Tixier just got around him and Trengrade's going to let him run off into the distance? Heck no. He saw what Tixier is doing. He has picked up whatever speed Seb has, and now he's back on there. He'll be ready to mount a charge back for that second place when he's ready.
I hope we get a replay of the onboard from that slide from Seb, because that had to have been arms completely crossed up, and somehow he caught it in the middle of the S's, essentially. So brilliant stuff as we watch from Trengrade, who slides a little wide, but he did not go off. Don't worry. Here, I think we're going to see it. Slow-mo. Yeah, look at that. Quick reaction there. Just snapped it back straight, and on he goes.
And this is going to be the other angle from the right side. Watch the hands. Go full counter steer for the moment there. Had to probably lift off of the throttle to help save the car as well. And thankfully, Trengrade right behind him was incredibly heads up. Said, hey, bud, I got you. I'm not going to run you over.
And this time around, I mentioned going a little wide from Ove. He did lose a bit of time, but not much. He's still within half a second, but he's not nearly as close as he was before. Look at that purple lap. Mick Claridge is responding now. Fastest of the race with a 55.699.
Well, and we highlighted the couple of mistakes from Seb Tixier. We haven't seen a lapped car in a handful of laps. Joe, look, 4 seconds Mick pulled it out all of a sudden.
So he's responded to these guys. Meanwhile, 11th place for Nieva. And I talked about the consistency. Speaking of a car that's loose, oh my goodness, heart was in my throat, and I'm sure it was for Jorge as he was off the line, and he managed to gather it back up. We don't know if that car is damaged as well, so I'm sure it is a handful.
Oh, it definitely looks damaged. I'm riding on board, and it's kind of odd. Sometimes the steering wheel is straight. I know that these drivers are driving a lot with their right foot, but looking at the front end of the car, you see it all banged up. I definitely think he's dealing with something.
Yeah, and I was about to say before he had that slide, we were talking about Nieva being so consistent. That's his strong point, staying out of trouble. He did not today. He's trying to make the best of it, but I'm not sure how much more we're going to see out of him. He can maybe catch up to Glenn Becker, but it does look like he's got problems of his own to worry about, not just trying to pass other cars. Traumahauser, in the meantime, let's check in on some of that mid-pack. They need some love, too. He's battling with Christo Chinmay, who we've already seen have an off or two in this race.
And Bjorn Ackerman is trying to make his comeback drive salvage from that mistake. He's right behind this silver car of Terry Traumhauser. Going down into turn 7, everybody's going to stay in line here, equal on the brakes, and who gets the nice exit out of the corner? And it's actually Bjorn Ackerman that I see that might have a little bit of an opportunity running up on Terry. Get that yaw angle as they come down the hill, and nice little 3-car battle.
Well, the good news for them is they don't have any of the leaders quickly approaching from behind for now. Whoa! What happened to Ackerman there?
I don't know.
Did he blow the
Is that
engine
a
or what?
wheel failure of some sort?
So
Yeah, it definitely looks like a hardware failure. No, I think Laust Olsen just went off right behind him.
in a very similar manner, he just kind of goes off the track and he's come to a halt and parked it. Wonder if maybe that was more of a rage quit from poor Laust, who might not have as much to fight with. That was I've never seen that, a hardware failure live with the driver's cam showing, and you could see his dissatisfaction as it happened, but thankfully was able to get it back up and running to try and make the best of it. Back to Gary Quellen now. Battle for 8th position, and Costa just in front of him.
Oh, side by side, deep on the brakes here. And Costa trying to hold on to that position. Gary Quellen is the car giving chase. Painted nearly identically, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. Not many teams that you see in this series that race together, at least that paint their cars similarly. Not sure if this is drivers that work together or if this is a case of they just both like this scheme that they saw on Trading Paints. But the Virginia's driver of Gary Quellen getting very close to, and Costa is the Club Iberia driver, going to try his best to hold him behind for at least 7 more laps.
It's a livery, a scheme I can never say the name of, the Marlboro livery out there. So yeah, I'm sure they grabbed that one off of Trading Paints. It is a classic vintage kind of themed livery out there. As Gary Quellen gets another nice little run. Let's see if he makes a move on Costa as he goes defensive. Not going to happen this time. Oh, problems right in front of him, though.
Whoa! That's Ackerman and Ivan Jojo. They both get themselves off track in time by the time they get through behind them, as they were also battling. But it was certainly frantic moments down into the chicane with a bunch of cars having to scatter across the track. Thankfully, it did not go worse. Jojo looks wounded, though. He's very slow on the front stretch as he zipped past us. But the 25... looks like he has now lost out to Quellen, who is running away from him.
Yeah, Quellen has gone away, but it has provided us almost like a 4-car battle here between, let's see here, who is this? Nieva, Becker, Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado, all right here for what is the 10th place position as they round up over the top. Well, I guess this isn't the top of Road Atlanta here. It's down into the back straight in one of the lowest areas, though.
Used to call it the dip before they added the chicane, and it still, I mean, just stuns me that this used to be just a straight, not a straight line, but a flat-out portion that you came to up towards the bridge and then had to steer it into this last corner. It had to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. But these drivers have a little bit safer. Who was that off course? That was Jaramillo. He's going to stay out of the way. He's a lapped car, so that wasn't a position gained.
Lots of action kind of going on a little bit further into this race. 4 laps to go for our leader, McClaren. He still continues 4 seconds out front as we check in. This is that battle for what is the 11th place. Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado trying to chase down Glenn Becker here in 11th.
Yeah, only 18 cars, are on the lead lap right now. It's about to be 17. It's kind of what we expected with such a short lap, that there were not going to be quite as many that are able to complete the full distance of this race. Salgado is one of those that is still on the lead lap. Yeah, I just saw Mick Claridge manage to go by Jana Lehman now and put another one down. I also have to confess, I thought maybe it would be a little bit more chaotic, and this isn't a calm race necessarily, but I'm very impressed with how everybody is dealing with the traffic.
I thought lap 1 and 2 were extremely impressive, Joe. We didn't really see any huge accidents, and with 40-plus cars on Road Atlanta Short, you're right. It's kind of almost a miracle that we didn't have it, but it has been a very impressive race. Haven't been too messy by any means. I'm actually keeping an eye on Mick Claridge. He just got his nose chopped. I believe it was Cam Porter, unfortunately, but it's got plenty of gap to go. He can burn some of that lead.
Yeah, you're right. He managed this so well from the front. It's not over, mind you. And we have seen things change in the past, just thinking back to last week. Unfortunately for poor Togo Hisada, who threw away what should have been a relatively easy win. McClarridge now coming down to the 2 to go signal once he goes by the flag stand at the front stretch. So Seb Tixier about 3.2 seconds back, unless he does get a really horrible set of traffic, which from what we saw there off to the corner of the screen, he might get a bit of it here.
Yeah, see what happens is, like you said, 2 laps to go. It's funny, I've been trying to say this place is reminding me of Lime Rock with the lap times, how fast-paced it is, and the whole race has gone by. I haven't even been able to say it yet, Joe.
I was thinking the same thing as I was preparing last night and looking at our schedule. In my intro, I talked about unusual tracks, and Lime Rock isn't an unusual track in this series. It tends to show up every once in a while, but this one is a lot less common, but shares a lot of those similarities, especially the chicane version. I mean, it's got the single chicane there. Same thing with this one. Everything else is all fast corners.
And I was actually thinking about Nieva, who we're watching here with that damage. We were talking about the steering damage. If it's actually steering to the right here, Joe, it might not be that bad. Think about how many long sweeping right-handers there are.
Yeah, that's true. Has a few more different left-handers than Lime Rock, but he's obviously still got to deal with them each and every time he approaches them. Last lap now for McClarridge in the number 5, still 3.5 seconds ahead of Seb Tixier. Next car on his list is Bjorn Ackerman, who's already a lap down after his technical issues, we believe, earlier in the race. Will he let him by and end this one another lap early, or is he going to try and carry on here to at least only finish a single lap down? He's not given away quite yet as they go through the chicane for the last time for McClarridge, at the very least, up and over the hill. A win for McClarridge to add to his tally in that number 5.
Ooh, nice big drift as he comes through. Seb Tixier now crosses the line with a slide himself in second place, and Mr. Trengrade will round out that podium.
Samaloa is going to lose a few points to our points leader as he did get up to 4th, but it is a distant 4th on this one. That consistency still serving him well, but he will not be gaining. We'll see if it continues to do so throughout the season. Quellen's in a little fight for 7th to the line, but I don't think he's going to have enough time. It gets close, but Steve Morris will fend him off. Quellen up 9 spots. We didn't mention that.
There's a nice battle there for 12th as Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado comes across. Michael Grissinger is going to hang on over Robert Plumley there in 15th as well.
That's going to wrap up our field. We'll be back after this short break with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Road Atlanta. That shot really sums up what we expected here today. A mass of cars heading down into the first turn, and yet it was a very clean start to this race. We had a few hiccups throughout the rest of it, but it still put on a great show. Mick Claridge took the win, and it was by about 3.5 seconds over Tixier. He had to stay on that pedal the whole way to keep Seb from running him down, who took second in the end. Ove Trangerade was hot on the heels of Tixier all the way to the finish, taking third, and Oye Zamaloa was P4. Then it was John Olsen in the fifth position, and Iztok Vreko, we think is a new driver, finished where he started, but held his own in sixth. Steve Morris was P7, followed by Quellen in eighth. Nieva only able to recover to ninth after a big incident between himself and another driver, Anacosta in 10th, and Becker rounding out those top drivers.
Yeah, Glenn Becker there in 11th spot. Then you have Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado in 12th place. Pablo Rodrigo Joglar here in 13th. Michael Grissinger finishing 14th. Robert Plumley going to be a top 15 effort here. Dylan Freckleton in 16th. Gary Ho, unfortunately, your first car one lap down after that incident, especially with Laust Olsen into that chicane there. Yanni Lehman finishes in 18th, Kevin Verbruggen 19th, and Jonathan Jordan in 20th.
21st goes to Krista Chenmai with Tobias Harnvey in 22nd. Terry Traumhauser P23. Jan Steven will be 24th, followed by Andre Bruno in 25th, and Bjorn Ackerman was the last one, one lap down in 26th. David Muse today finished 27th, followed by Kurt Clapper in that P28 spot, and then only Peter Elfar, the last one, 2 laps down. I think he was a new one to this series. From there on down, it gets to drivers who had pretty big problems by the end of the race, most of them DNFs, unfortunately. Does look like we've got our second place finisher, Seb Tixier, ready to talk to us. Seb, you managed to make that pass into second place. Ove kept you honest the whole way, but I get the feeling your sights were more forward to Mick Claridge.
Yeah, I knew that Mick was faster than me. I mean, every time we practiced together, he was 1 or 2 tenths faster than me. And I totally messed up my qualification. I almost have 1x in each laps. And yeah, so it was really tough. Thankfully, the back markers were behaved very nicely, so thanks to them. Yeah, I did not manage to catch up on Mick. I mean, even if I was just behind him, maybe I would have been able to stay with him and maybe take advantage of a back marker or something to pass him. But on pure pace on this track, yeah, I don't think I could beat him.
Now, how did this track feel coming through that long right-hander onto the backstretch? Because we were watching the cars, it looked extremely difficult. Was it loose the entire way through?
I saw that Ove was standing there a lot. I know that Ove like a loose hand car, but for me, usually I already set up my car to have a good drive on exit. So for me, yeah, no, I was quite tight there. I could keep all the way to the edge on the right, full throttle when. I managed to put the fourth gear. Not full throttle at the beginning, but when I put the fifth gear. So no, I was quite. I couldn't go like full throttle for sure the whole long term, but yeah, my setup is perfect for this kind of long curve. That's why I like a track like Aragon or Spa with very fast curves.
Well, it's got to be a ton of fun, no doubt. Next time out, we're going to be heading off to the Nürburgring. That's going to have its own fair share of fast curves. In fact, just about every curve you can imagine. What are your thoughts heading off to the 24-hour layout?
Yeah, Nürburgring, Nordschleife, always the same deal. You compete against the track, not the drivers. So yeah, we just try to do a good qualification and survive.
Yeah, I think survive is the key. Well, congratulations on a P2. You gave us an entertaining race.
Thank you.
Seb Tixier there in the number 17, who was beat by Mick Claridge. I do believe Joey has caught up with our winner.
Hey, Mick, you got us?
Hey, Joey.
Congratulations on yet another win. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, it's good to have a win. I was, I've been away for such a long time out of the car. I just wanted to come back and, doing well at Milwaukee last week was pretty good. But, I really did want to get a win this season if I could, just to sort of prove to myself that I'm back on top with the car, So, yeah, enjoyed it. Still a bit freaky, though. My setup was completely different to most people. So it's going to be back to normal next week.
What did you think of this short version of Road Atlanta? I noticed that traffic was a major factor in kind of that gap, doing the accordion thing where it would come down and then extend back out. Did you have any really close moments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tons of close moments. Well, regards to the layout, I mean, it's sort of like it happened by accident because I used to do a lot of testing. Whenever we were testing the for the long race, I would, if I messed up a lap, I would cut the course and just go through that right hander. And after a while, I started sort of trying to drive it fast, and all of a sudden I thought, God, this is a pretty good corner. We should actually run this. So it was me really that sort of got it sort of on the schedule along with John Olsen, because he tried it and loved it, and John carries some weight in the series. So there you go.
Well, it seemed to work out for you just fine collecting another checkered flag. What about the rest of the season? How much more of you or are we going to see of you?
Yeah, do you know what? I don't know, because I keep looking at the map and and I keep seeing really cheap flights to places where I want to go, and I'm sort of in the middle of planning all of that, and so I don't know, but yeah, it's as it stands at the moment, I'm probably going to do the rest of the season, and if I do this season, then I will do next season because it will be too cold to go anywhere. So yeah, probably see me.
Well, hear that, everybody else. If you want to win, you're going to have to deal with Mick Claridge probably the rest of the season. Anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, there's some guys watching here at the house. Mike Kennedy Diggins, he's there. Denise the Gub, Denise's dad, Dennis, Malcolm Johnston. But there's one person I got to say thanks to for this week, and it's just none other than Glenn Becker. The guy's just an absolute legend, and that's all there is to it. I mean, he's almost on par with the Mackenzie boys, and that's saying something. And don't mess with them, by the way, Joey.
Well, that was Mick Claridge, your winner and pole sitter today here at Road Atlanta.
Got one more to talk to, Cam Porter, who didn't really have the race that he wanted. Unfortunately, we are chatting with him, 36th place, so way, way down the order, 12 laps down. Looks like you had a couple big incidents in there throughout the race, Cam.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm pretty sure it was a technical glitch with my shifter or something about my setup. I felt like I was just downshifting normally for the chicane, and just money shifted. I didn't think I hit first gear. In fact, I'm pretty sure I didn't. And that's what caused my car to spin out. And unfortunately, I took out Jason Clapper with me. So apologies to Jason Clapper for that incident. But up to that point, I was having a blast. It was really fun, having a great battle with a few guys, making a couple of passes, moving up some spots. I was hoping to finish inside the top 20. Unfortunately, a technical glitch and my continued bad luck in this season so far put the kibosh on that.
You weren't the only one that had technical issues. We got a couple other drivers that seemed to have some problems for some reason. We heard you say that you're having a good time. Mick was the one saying he was kind of trying to get everybody to race this track. What's your opinion now that you've run the short version?
Interestingly enough, this is the first time I've ever raced this layout in iRacing. I have raced it before, way back in the R Factor 1 days, but that was a long time ago. But I like it. It's really short lap time, and I feel like it's really no time to take a break. I was just feathering the throttle for about 90% of the lap because it's so difficult to get the power down. But yeah, I had fun today, regardless.
Well, I guess you'll need to head out to start getting your practice for the Nürburgring up next. So best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll talk to you in better conditions next week.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
That was Cam Porter, unfortunately down in 36th today at the end of it. But we're going to wrap it up with a big thank you to the community for bringing us back for another season of coverage, and also to the team today, Bobbert, Joey, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss a moment on the channel. Next race, like we said, the Nürburgring, and it is the 24-hour version of that course that they're going to be running. That'll be Saturday, November 4th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. Clocks are going to be changing for those of you here in the States. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts, though, that we've got listed here, because up next, Camel GT goes to their traditional run at Road America at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, though, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.